Hi there, and welcome to our 2023 Garden Guidebook Workshop. I'm Whitney English. I wanted to take a moment and introduce myself. As a published author, designer, artist, and entrepreneur, I'm here to share my experience and knowledge when it comes to creating beautiful and thriving gardens. Whether you're a seasoned green thumb or just starting out, this workshop is the perfect opportunity for you to learn any new skills, gain inspiration, and connect with fellow garden enthusiasts. Over the course of the workshop, I will guide you through the process of creating your very own garden guidebook, tailored to your unique style and preferences. From selecting the perfect plants to getting to know those plants, you'll be able to gain valuable and practical insights and tips to help you create a stunning outdoor space. So grab your gardening gloves and get ready to dig in. We're going to start by talking about the basics. So if you've gardened in the past, you know all this, but it's just here to kind of remind us what we need to be doing. And if you're not new, and if you are new, this is very important information that you're going to need to figure out before you get started. The first thing that you need to do is figure out your zone. Zones are provided by the USDA. You can you can Google and say, what's my zone zip code? And Google will tell you what your zone is. We are zone 7 here in Oklahoma. And, but even in zones, you'll see on the tags on plants, you'll see things that say 7A or 7B, and sometimes you can get very specific about zones. This is only my 4th year of gardening, and I'm still figuring out what all the little nuances of the zones are, but it does help you make better decisions about what to plant where and what to plant when. The next thing that you've got to figure out is sun. The majority of plants are sun plants. There are a variety of shade plants. Usually I order shade plants from catalogs because I don't find a lot of shade plants available at local nurseries. It might be different in your area. But most plants require at least 6 hours of sun a day. So it can be helpful to watch your yard during the day to document and get an idea of how much sun each area is getting. If you plant something in an area that only gets 5 hours of sun a day, maybe it will grow anyway, or you might need to move it to an area that gets 7 hours of sun a day. So it's just important to keep an eye on that and start. So just when you're outside walking around your yard, just make a note of especially if you have a fence, where is the sun when? Look at the ground, where is the sun landing, and how much sun do you have? Because that is the sunniest part of your yard is going to be the best place to garden. The next topic we've got to cover, and this is one of the biggest mistakes I have made in gardening: soil. I heard the phrase a couple years ago, you want to plant a 50-cent plant in a $5 hole. We had a house that in 2020, the first year I gardened, we moved right after that year. But that house was brand new. We live in Oklahoma. There's a ton of red dirt and clay in the soil. It's not very loamy. You want a loamy soil, and you picture just dirt that's just like running through your fingers. That's the kind of soil you want. Well, we had pretty much red clay. Our house was built on red clay. So in order to get things to grow, we had to heavily amend the soil. And we used a combination of peat moss and compost available at our local supply stores. I also invested in a compost bin at the same time so that we could, because it was expensive to amend our soil, and I wanted to create organic material on our own, especially because just if you're throwing fruit and vegetables away, why not just throw them into a compost bin with all your fall leaves, and then you've got a great little batch, and it boils down. It doesn't, compost doesn't grow, it actually shrinks. So we actually are still adding compost to the bin. We've never actually even used the compost, but still, I feel really great about the fact that I've got this little bit of compost, and maybe I'll be trying to plant something here pretty soon, and we'll need a good hole for that plant to go in, and that compost is going to be nice and ready. There are lots of things that you might need to amend your soil with. You can order a soil test online. You can take a soil sample to your local garden supply center, and they might have some recommendations. You can get into acidity levels. What's acidic? Do you need to raise the pH? Do you need to make the sulfur more acidic? So different things that you can add just as a reference are lime, different types of manure, wood ash. You don't want to add regular ashes, but wood ash can be good for soil. There are elemental sulfur is a component that I've heard people have added to soil in the past. And then compost, I already said manure, but and then leaf mold is another thing that really nurtures the soil. And sometimes that can be created organically, naturally, just by covering things up with mulch and just letting the moisture retain in there. And soil can be amended over time. And I have seen such a difference in the production of my plants since I started amending the soil. So it's something that I will plan on doing every single year. And I will do that first before I do anything else. Next up, of course, you've got to have water. It's important to make sure not only that the plants are getting water, but that the water is draining. Some plants don't like to have what they call wet feet. So if you've got a plant in a container where there's not good drainage, or if even in a spot in your yard, maybe there's a lower spot that really just all the water just goes to that area and you can't get a plant to grow there, you might need to look at a type of plant that might grow well in a wet environment, like on a creek bank or something like that. We have an Orbit Beehive controller for our sprinkler system, which I like because it takes into account local weather patterns. And if it's rained, it won't come on. If it's possible and you don't have a sprinkler system and you put one in, it can help with, you can decide placement. You can work with your sprinkler, your sprinkler guy, and just make sure that if you have a plan in place yet, you can say, I need this kind of water right here and this kind of water right here. And there's different heads and things like that. So I would actually recommend having a sprinkler system put in, or at least heavily modified if you already have one, at the same time you're trying to install any type of perennial landscaping elements. Then let me see, what else? You want to make sure, the other thing about water is if you will mulch your plants, it will help retain the moisture in the ground and reduce water loss through evaporation. So when I got started gardening, I didn't like the idea of spending a bunch of money on mulch. And now I mulch liberally to keep the weeds down and the moisture in the ground. The next thing we need to talk about is space. Spacing your plants properly helps prevent disease. It makes it easier to weed, and it gives plants room to grow. Plants need oxygen to grow. Oxygen needs to be able to circulate through the plants in order for them to grow. So if you overcrowd your plants, they aren't going to thrive. They're not going to produce quite as much if you're looking to harvest vegetables or fruits or things like that. Helping, deciding spacing, you can figure out. We're going to talk more about this in part 3, which is plant profiles, but you're going to want to make sure that you tag and allocate enough space. So if it says this plant is going to, grow this tall and this wide, you're going to want to think about what you plant next to it. And I'll be totally honest, next to it and how far away. I'll be totally honest and say that there have been, sometimes I buy too many plants when I'm at the hardware store, and I end up having to plant them closer together than I like. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. So if you have space to really spread your plants out and let them grow, it'll be easier to nurture them, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. And then the next thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you start thinking about seasonal tasks. Gardening is not just a springtime thing, it is a year-round thing. And if you will take a look at the seasonal tasks, we will talk more in depth about those in the next video. But if you'll take a look at the seasonal tasks and then start identifying which ones you think apply to you and what you should do and when, and start getting that stuff on your calendar, you'll be better prepared to handle not just this season, but the next one, and your plants will just absolutely love you for it. So thanks again for joining us. I can't wait to see you in the next video.